Well, when any big mass uprising erupts like we've seen in this country over the past few weeks, people always want to know, what's it about? What do they want? What are their demands? And one slogan, demand, however you want to refer to it, that really is cutting through all the noise is the one you see in the picture right next to me now: defund the police. And that, which is certainly a bold-faced proposition there, has caused quite a bit of consternation. There are, of course, those on the right and the defenders of the police who want to say that this is some recipe for mass chaos, but there's also many who are trying to co-opt this message in an attempt to seem like they are closer to the movement. For instance, take DC's Mayor Muriel Bowser, who was with Anderson Cooper talking about just this issue a few days ago.
Well, I think that a lot of people have different meanings for what they mean when they say defund the police. And as I've listened and read, I think most people are saying that they want reform and that they want good policing.
I don't know what she is reading or listening to. I can say from firsthand experience, she certainly isn't listening to anyone who's been actively organizing around these issues on the ground in Washington, D.C. But obviously that sentiment there, that defund the police, basically just means the status quo plus one, is not what we're seeing on the streets. Something that was clearly reflected when Mayor Jacob Frey had a question around his support for defunding the police put to him at a protest in the epicenter of this uprising, Minneapolis.
Yeah. I do not support the full abolition of the police.
All right. Get the fuck out of here. Go home. Go home, Jacob. Go home.
Well, hard to know what to say about that. I mean, it speaks for itself. That's going to go down as an iconic image, I believe, of this protest movement. And I hope people go look at the whole video there. Very powerful moment. And I think showing what defund the police is all about. And people understand many of these hollow attempts because look at who's doing them. I mean, you look at Mayor Muriel Bowser, it just has to be said because of everything that she is doing, from the Black Lives Matter Plaza to what we saw with Anderson Cooper, to seem like she is down with the cause, that her entire tenure as mayor of Washington, D.C. has been marked by police murders in which there was no accountability, and she defended the police. All sorts of scandals, a massive scandal with racist T-shirts and a secret underground unit of brutal police. And there was another similar unit also of brutal police with their own T-shirts that were, celebrating shooting people between the eyes, kill shots. So that's the type of police department that Mayor Bowser has routinely defended. And her police chief, by the way, is calling for more funding for the police right now. So she's saying, yes, I support defund the police, or whatever she's saying to Anderson Cooper, while increasing the funds for the police. So we have to cut through all this noise. What is it really about? Obviously, this right-wing, racist caricature, quite frankly, that this is some sort of, enraged mob of people who are tearing up and destroying the world is completely fake and is rooted very deeply, I think, in the history of this country of demonizing mass protest movements, outside agitators, all of that. So let's put that aside because it's obviously not reflected on the streets. But what about the other side of the coin? If it isn't, as we're hearing from Mayor Muriel Bowser, people who are affiliated with the former Obama administration, that all it means is reform around the edges. Well, that doesn't seem right based on what we're seeing. So drilling down, what's it about? Bottom line, this is about taking the appropriate amount of resources and putting them towards things that work to help average, everyday working people. Policing claims to solve all these problems of public safety, many different other things. We're always told we need the police. But the reality is there's tens of millions of Black people in this country who have seen occupation, military-style policing, the most, disgusting and humiliating harassment-style policies like stop and frisk, and they haven't seen tragic community violence end. It just hasn't ended. We've seen, we're told we have to have the police for so many different reasons. I mean, there are tens of millions of women in this country who desperately want to end rape, but recognize that the police, who often bring pro-sexual assault attitudes, I hate to say it like that, but police officers disproportionately have a higher rate of abusing their significant others. They have untested millions of rape kits. I mean, the shame, the humiliation that victims who come forward are often put through by the police when they report. I think we can see on all of these deeper levels, there are tens of millions of people who, yes, they want to feel safe. Yes, they want to have relations between each other that are respectable and sustainable, but they've seen this massive policing presence and they haven't seen it solve these problems. While on the other hand, we've seen the massive disinvestment in communities. We've seen the massive push to continue the type of patriarchal rape culture. I mean, all the deeper underlying issues that exist in this country around poverty, around racism, the oppression of women that are deeply rooted, baked into how this capitalist system was built up. They're not being solved by police. There are programs that are chipping them away, but they're often marginalized. They're called, entitlement programs, discretionary spending, handouts to the poor, welfare queens. I mean, anything that actually helps someone is demonized, marginalized, and underfunded. But if it's the cops killing people or the military bombing someone overseas, you can spend billions or trillions of dollars and no one bats an eyelash. And that's what Defund the Police is about. Millions of people who are saying, this is crazy. This doesn't make any sense at all. We know what the problems are. We know their solutions. The police aren't an effective way to solve them. I mean, who are the police really is what they're saying. I mean, who do they protect? Who do they serve? The police ultimately are designed to enforce the law, which we know is unjust, is discriminatory, that protects the worst possible things that exist. The fact that there are hundreds of thousands of more empty dwellings than there are homeless people, but the law criminalizes a houseless person for seeking shelter in a storm or at any time. This is the type of system that says, well, it's terrible when people loot the stores. Wage theft by employers. Wage theft by employers of people's wages is larger than all other forms of theft combined on a yearly basis. More wages are stolen than all of the so-called criminal stealing going on in the whole society. And yet that is protected by the law. You steal a watch from the store, you can go to jail for 20 years. If you steal someone's wages, you just have to pay a fine, if that. So you see people recognizing this reality. Policing doesn't work. That it's not something that can be fixed, but it is something that is actually doing what it's meant to be doing, enforcing an unjust, discriminatory system. It's an us versus them mentality. And when it's an us versus them mentality, there will always be overwhelming force meted out against them. And Defund the Police is saying, let's take the resources from institutions we are seeing fail right before our eyes and put them behind the needs of the people to build up strong, resilient communities. Because when you really look at the things people want, public safety, strong, resilient communities, it's not the number of police that correspond with that. It's the access to opportunity. It's the non-existence of poverty. It's many of the things, the positive education that we know exist to make people feel safe in their communities. And that's what this is really about. There are going to be a lot of people who want to take it away from that. And it's not just because they don't want to see these things happen. They don't want to see them happen, but they also want to cover up their own failures, like the Muriel Bowsers of the world, like the Jacob Frays of the world, to do anything about this in the first place. Many of the same people trying to co-opt it created the conditions for it to happen. So it's important to continue to push on the substance of this demand that is felt by so many millions of people in this country, that policing is an institution that cannot deliver justice. It's not an institution that can deliver safety, that for that we have to go much deeper to the root causes of these issues. But it's not as if we don't know what's happening. It's not as if there aren't already successful ways that don't involve the police of attacking it. It just takes the political will of the masses in the streets to move people in that direction.